Hello and welcome. Hope everyone's enjoying the conference so far today. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some housekeeping. So this session is being recorded and will be available soon after the conference. You can follow us at Tenbound on all the socials so you can keep tabs on when those recordings are available. Feel free to utilize the chat and Q&A functions, and Dawn will get to questions as time permits. Okay, so with that said, let's get started. This session is the SDR is the most critical role in the revenue ops organization. So welcome LeanData's VP of Revenue Operations, Dawn Otvos.
Great, thanks, Hannah. It's funny when we started talking about this. When we started talking about this session, our communications person got a little freaked out about the title, and it was because she was asking. She was like, "Well, wait, SDRs don't report to revenue operations. So, like, how can it be the most important part of the revenue operations team?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right." I said, "SDRs. It's probably more that the SDRs are the most important part of the revenue life cycle." And that's really what I wanted to share today is basically my background, like how I got in, how I started as an SDR, how I got into revenue operations, what I envision revenue operations to be, and then what we do at LeanData and how we work with our SDR teams very closely to make sure that everything works and that we make sure that our SDR teams are really successful. Just the other thing I'd love to say too is thank you to Tenbound for this opportunity to speak, and also all the sponsors. All the sponsors that we have today. We wouldn't really be able to have an event like this without sponsors. So LeanData, we're proud to be platinum level sponsors, and just want to make sure I extend a thanks to all the other sponsors. Make sure you stop by their booths. You can use AirMeet to do that. I'll be at our booth after my talk here if you want to connect with me directly. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I have my LinkedIn link here. So my background, I actually joined LeanData in March of last year. So it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. The first week of March, I had my last interview. I was extended my offer, and then I put in my notice to my other company on March 6th. So if you remember, March 6th to March 20th of last year is kind of when everything fell apart for the pandemic. So I was really the first person. Well, I was in the first group that started remotely at LeanData. So, that itself has some challenges, and I'll talk about some of those and how we address those with our SDR teams and how revenue operations was a part of that. But I come with 12 years of experience in sales and revenue operations roles. But I really started my career in sales as an SDR. I fresh out of college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I kind of fell into an inside sales role. We called it inside sales back then. And I really cut my teeth in sales, making phone calls, getting leads from marketing, following up, trying to get those meetings set for my reps. That was really my entree into sales. So, I'm really intimately familiar with how difficult the role of SDRs are. It is a bit of a grind. As David was talking in his opening this morning. If you have that daily grind without that sense of community, it becomes pretty challenging to do. When I was an SDR, one of the some of the struggles that I had was that you got really bad leads from marketing. Not all leads were equal. We'd get these submissions on our website, or inbound leads that would come in that were total garbage. What do you do with them? The expectation back then was, marketing wanted sales, SDR to follow up on every single lead, and every lead was treated equally and expected to be followed up on equally, which really wasn't the case. A lot of them had bad data. A lot of them sometimes would be misassigned. I'd end up with a lead that wasn't even, didn't even belong to me. It belonged to someone else's territory because, maybe somebody was located in the West, but the company was headquartered in the East. So, it's the East rep that should have been following up with it, not me. So, the thing that I really walked away with from that experience of being in that SDR role was that, sometimes sales and marketing management don't really care enough about the SDR's plight to make changes to make the SDRs more successful. And that's really what I've taken, from my experiences in the SDR into the role of revenue operations, and how I really work towards making sure that our SDR teams are successful. So, as an SDR, and as I went through that process, I became, I had a VP at one point tell me, like, Don, you should really get into revenue operations. You should probably get into sales operations, what we call it at the time. He's like, you have a real passion for this. You really, you're not just looking out for yourself. You really want to make things work for everybody. You should probably go find an SDR, or excuse me, a sales operations functions to do full time. And so that was really what I did back in 2010. I was working at MuleSoft. I ended up coming to a company called Yammer. If you're not familiar with it, Yammer was really Slack before Slack. It was acquired by Microsoft in 2012. But I was the first revenue operations person at the company. The thing about it was, I got to build the engine, right? So that was really the exciting piece for me for revenue operations, was being able to directly affect how things were going to be built out and how we would scale them. And so when I started at Yammer, I was the first sales ops person on the ground. We had just bought Salesforce. No one had touched it. There was no, from a revenue operations standpoint, I think, you either come into a role fresh as the first person, or you're trying to clean up the mess that's already there because they've had Salesforce or something, they had their CRM, and there's a bunch of stuff to clean up. I started at Yammer, it was completely fresh. So I had this clean slate, was able to really build out a really good process around how we were going to operate, from where we got leads, how those leads got moved to sales, how sales addressed them, and how we went on from there. And so it was really my first experience in helping to really build a process and making sure that it was able to scale. We drove Yammer from a $0 organization. So when I started, we didn't have any ARR at all. And then we closed our first enterprise. Our first kind of B2B sale was Nationwide Insurance, and it was like for $40K. And we it was all kinds of hoopla. And we grew it from that. Within 2 years, we were at an 80 million ARR run rate. So it was kind of at that point where I was like, whoa, I think I really know what I'm doing with the sales operations thing. I really want to be able to not just, continue to do it, but also share my experience with others to help others become more successful. And that's really, what I get from being part of Tenbound and part of the community, and being able to share my experience so that, people don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so, part of that is kind of redefining what sales operations was. We at LeanData really look at sales operations as just a function of the larger revenue operations umbrella. That if you really think about it, the different operations roles in an organization is consolidating around revenue. Rather than staying siloed as marketing operations and partner operations, customer success operations, sales operations, they're all becoming under the umbrella of revenue operations, because then, from a revenue operations perspective, you're able to identify where you have efficiencies, where you can improve on the process, making sure everybody's, making decisions from the same data, right? Because I think sometimes when teams are siloed, marketing is looking at one number, SDRs are looking at another, customer success is looking at another. Whereas really, if you have a revenue operations organization that's covering that from end to end, you're all singing from the same hymn book. You're all making decisions from the same data. And I think that's really just an important piece. And that's really how we've built the team at LeanData, and also, what we tell our customers, about how they should structure their teams as well. And so, keeping that in mind, what I tend to say is that, revenue operations really owns what the customer journey looks like. So as your prospects are moving through the buying stages, when they're coming in through marketing, when they're getting, handed off to SDRs to AEs to customer success. Each of those handoffs really come with risk if you aren't providing the right context. Making sure that there's information available to the person inheriting that person, so that when they're interacting with your organization, the customer's really feeling like, wow, this person really knows about me. They understand what my experience has been with the company to date, and that really having that 5-star experience in that customer journey is going to make that customer not only be happy with the purchase decision they made, but they're probably going to rave about you to their comrades and their colleagues and their communities that are looking to make buying decisions around products that you offer. Now the issue with that is that's the way it looks like externally, but internally, we really see it as more of a relay race, right? So for revenue operations, we see each of these teams, whether it's marketing, sales development, your account executives, your customer success teams. As those handoffs happen, those handoffs become really critical to the success of making sure that customer has that amazing experience. Because the second that you really that baton gets dropped, that's really where you're kind of losing the race, right? So we if you really think about a relay race, you want to make sure that handoff happens all the way to the end of the last person, the last runner. But if the baton is dropped in any of those handoffs, the race is lost. And so really each of those handoffs become really key, but the most key handoff is really from marketing to sales development. And so that's really really what I want to drill in on, because obviously if that handoff happens and you're losing the race at that first handoff, they're never going to become a customer. They're never going to get handed off to an AE. If that process is broken at that first handoff, if you don't really have what the handoff between the marketing team, your demand gen team to the sales development team looks like, you've kind of lost the race. And so, I think a lot of folks talk about the alignment between sales and marketing and what that looks like, right? So sales is complaining they don't get enough marketing leads. Marketing is complaining that sales isn't following up on the leads they're getting. And, when in the reality, the embodiment of that sales marketing handoff is really that the sales development role, right? They're really the ones that are the first sales touch at the top of the funnel. They're really the ones that are having that first engagement with whatever those marketing campaign leads are. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to give marketing the best feedback around, like, how are the campaigns performing? Are these good leads? How is this working? As marketing's passing off these MQLs to sales, it's really the SDRs that are turning those into meetings. So I think it's really critical for marketing to be invested with the SDR team to understand, what is it that is resonating in the messaging that we have? What is it that the marketing campaigns that we're sending over to you, which of them do you see that are having the easiest conversions? What do those conversions look like? And so all of those pieces are really, they really fall upon the SDR team to make those really work. And it just goes to show, it just really stresses that marketing to sales handoff is really that critical piece. The marketing leads get handed off to sales. That said, how can revenue operations help their SDR teams? And really, what we've done at LeanData, in the way that we've structured our revenue operations teams, obviously we're revenue operations in the way that we're structured. We're really trying to break the silos to understand, what are the ways that we can increase the efficiencies of the processes that we have. Work with marketing to really prioritize campaigns, right? Because again, rather than have it be a situation where SDRs are treating every lead like they have an equivalent urgency, I think if an SDR, if a revenue operations team can work with marketing to prioritize those campaigns, and then assign an SLA accordingly, and then measure that SLA against whatever team is doing the follow-up, I think that really improves what the efficiencies look like for how well leads move through the system. And then, at the end of the day, it really helps in capacity planning, because rather than treating every lead as having the highest priority, if you're then able to look at your lead flow based on the priority that it has, you're then able to know, do you need to increase the number of SDRs you have to cover the number of leads that you have coming in, or are SDRs going hungry because you don't have enough of those high priority leads that are coming inbound. And the way that we do it at LeanData is we really look at it as, priority one lead is something that would be like a demo request, something that comes in as a app exchange download, something that comes in as a contact me now. So for those types of leads, we have a very sophisticated follow-up from our SDR team. We have SLAs that are assigned to it. Obviously, we use LeanData to make sure that we've matched that person when they come inbound to the right rep. So if it's a fresh account that we've never talked to, we assign it to an inbound SDR. If it's an account that we do have a relationship with, where we're maybe in an active sales cycle, we make sure that lead goes to the AE. If it's a customer, we want to make sure that it goes to the CSM. And then what we've done is leveraged our relationships. We happen to be customers of both SalesLoft and Outreach, and that is because LeanData has really tight integrations with both platforms, so that once you have that assignment made, you can then leverage the really powerful automation tools that you have within your sales engagement platform to automate adding to a sequence or a cadence the follow-up that you want, and have it be contextual to the type of campaign that it's coming in on. So again, in your sales engagement platform, making sure that you have sequences and cadences that are tied specifically to the campaign that is coming in, so that it's contextual, so that when the prospect is receiving that first touch from the SDR or the AE or the CSM, the experience that they have is fantastic, because it's not just a general canned, thanks for getting a hold of us, we'll get in touch with you soon. You actually have the context of why they came in. So if it's an app exchange, you talk about the fact that they came in as an app exchange lead and you'd love to talk to them more. Or if it's a demo request, you have that type of messaging. And if it's a contact me now, it's a little bit more general. What we then do is we then look at the rest of the campaigns, and we assign it either a P2 or a P3. So our P2 campaigns are really those where you don't need to get a hold of somebody within 10 minutes, but we do want you to get a hold of them, let's say, within 48 hours. So those would be things like, I attended a live event, I downloaded a white paper, I viewed a recorded webinar. Those leads, you're going to have a little bit more time to get a hold of them. So again, we do have those contextual outreach sequences and those sales cadences that are created for those campaigns, but it would also gives the SDRs time to do a little bit more personalization, because obviously, studies have shown, Jeremy Donovan of SalesLoft, when I was at SalesLoft, we did a great study at looking at every single, connection that was ever made. There's a great white paper you can download that Jeremy has at SalesLoft that talks about if you just personalize the first 20% of your message, you're gonna yield your highest amount of converted leads. And so, by making sure that you have those P2 campaigns giving your SDRs time to do that personalization when they're sending their outreach sequence or their sales loft cadence. We're finding that we have those convert much better in the long run because of that level of personalization that's happening. So we've worked with our marketing team to make sure that in the sales engagement platform, all the context and messaging for those cadences and sequences are written. So for an SDR, it kind of makes it really easy, right? So when those leads come in, we have an alert. We have an alert in Slack. We email the rep, let them know, hey, you got a P1 or a P2 lead. Here's the campaign it came from. Here's the outreach sequence or sales loft cadence that it's been added to. And then when they go in their sales engagement platform, they're executing on their tasks. They have all of that context so that they know when they're personalizing their emails or they're making their phone calls, they're speaking the language of the person that came in through the campaign that they came in on. And again, at the end of the day, it's just going to really improve that experience for the prospect, and then hopefully convert them into a lead, into a meeting. So from there, I think the next thing that I've just kind of been seeing in the market is that modern sales orgs are really adding SDR ops as another function under RevOps. And so if you think about it, this is really the person that's going to be responsible for administering all the SDR tools. So they're going to be the person that's really making sure that when those those leads coming from marketing going to SDRs are having the proper follow-up, they're getting alerted, they're getting the notifications, they have the right cadences and sequences written, they're contextual, the automation's working. It's really becomes a point person for the SDR teams and for the demand gen teams to look to on the RevOps team. To make sure that marketing to SDR handoff that I talked about being really so critical is something that happens, and it's something that executes in an efficient way that just increases the success for the SDR to convert and get that meeting. And really, I think the other thing too is that SDR ops function is becoming a lot more critical in the pandemic, since a lot of SDR teams are now operating remotely. I think even for us, when I started at LeanData, when the pandemic first started, we didn't have our SDR teams making their phone calls through the sales engagement platform. So like one of the first things we really had to do was quickly make sure that everything worked around placing calls through outreach and through sales loft, so that everything tracked over, everything got logged, everything was moved and flowed and executed on in the right way, so that we can maintain the level of activity and the level of conversion that we were getting on those campaigns, even through the pandemic. And so really, I think that having that dedicated SDR helps drive that success for the rest of the SDR team. And it's something that we're looking at doing at LeanData, and it's obviously something that I've seen at other organizations. I think if you look at LinkedIn, you'll see SDR ops is a role that I think more and more companies are adding as a critical role for the RevOps team. That was my presentation. That I hope you enjoyed it. At the end of the day, I have empathy for SDRs. I love the role is a critical role, and we as a RevOps team, as a sales organization, we should be really doing everything we can to make sure that you're successful, and that you make sure you have the tools that you need to execute your work, and that everything that you're doing from all the things that are coming from marketing and flowing through your organizations are turning into those meetings that end up becoming closed-won opportunities. So I think I have a few minutes left. Hannah, I think we can, if there's any Q&A. Oh yes, don't let me forget. Please swing by the LeanData booth. We have some folks there now. If you head over there, I'll be there after the end of my talk here. Happy to talk more specifically about some of the things on how we're using LeanData and anything else in our tech stack. Again, like my whole philosophy is to not have to have people reinvent the wheel as they're going through revenue operations. And I'm really happy to share what my experience has been and how we can, how I can help you and your organization be successful, whether that's using LeanData with your existing sales tech stack. Obviously, we find that it is a critical piece of the tech stack. So, if you're not using LeanData, we can share as to how you can make that work for you. And if you are using it, happy to talk about, some of the ways that you can leverage it to see success.
Great. Okay. Thank you. We don't have any questions in the Q&A, but if anyone has questions, they can go head to the booth and talk to somebody there.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Don, so much. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.